They say, we don't need him, freedom, freedom. He's a dictator, he's a dictator. A lot of people are saying maybe we like a dictator. So the line is that I'm a dictator, but I stop crime. So a lot of people say, you know, if that's the case, I'd rather have a dictator. They say, he's a horrible dictator type person. I'm a dictator. But sometimes you need a dictator. I'm not a king. What I am, if I was a king, I wouldn't be dealing with you.
Well, millions of Americans disagree with that, and they have marched in No King protests. But a new report suggests they may have been underestimating Trump's ambitions. The Atlantic reporting that Trump allies say he has begun thinking about himself less as a peer of George Washington and Abraham Lincoln, and more as an addition to the trifecta of great men, Alexander the Great, Julius Caesar, and Napoleon Bonaparte. All three of these men were literally emperors, not just kings. Trump suffering delusions of grandeur here. One Trump confidant telling The Atlantic he has been talking recently about how he is the most powerful person to ever live. Consciously or not, he is certainly emulating those emperors in at least one way. He is directing the U.S. Mint to produce coins with his face on them. Putting your own face on money is something that these other emperors also famously did. In a sense, this is nothing new for Donald Trump. He has been putting his name and his face on products that he has been trying to peddle for decades.
When it comes to great stakes, I've just raised the stakes.
My new game is Trump, the game.
The God Bless the USA Bible. At Trump University, we teach success. That's what it's all about.
It's a smooth vodka. It's a great tasting vodka.
The elegance of Trump Vineyard Estates, it just can't be beat.
We were the first plane out this morning. We were the most successful flight this morning. We had more people than anybody else, and I think we had better service than anybody else.
Now Trump is doing to the U.S. government what he did to cheap steaks and bad vodka. He is putting his name and his face on everything, renaming the Kennedy Center to add himself, doing the same to the Institute of Peace. He is planning to put his signature on paper currency. And of course, there is the gold coin that we just mentioned. He's pressing for this enormous arch in his honor on the National Mall. And he has been draping federal buildings with, you see it there, giant banners of his own face. He's also putting his face on passes to national parks. And guess what could be next? Yep, your passport, as well as a Trump-class warship being created by the Navy. But here's the thing, Americans actually are not buying any of it. Polls show very low support for some of these projects, only in the 20s for the ballroom and the arch, and just 12% approve of Trump putting his signature on U.S. currency.
Auguste Napoleon, Emperor of the French, is crowned and enthroned. Long live the Emperor! Long live the Emperor!
Joaquin Phoenix there being crowned as emperor in the film Napoleon. Joining me now is Ashley Parker, staff writer at The Atlantic. She's one of the authors of the latest piece about Trump's imperial ambitions. Ashley, it's great to have you on the show. So Trump is modeling himself, it seems. He's certainly obsessed with emperors, plastering his name and face across government. Give us a sense of what is actually happening here. What is the animating ideology behind why Donald Trump is doing what he is?
Yeah, so we heard that recently in his second term, President Trump has been comparing himself, as you previewed, to these three sort of who the philosopher Hegel described as great men of world history: Napoleon, Julius Caesar, and Alexander the Great. And we asked the White House, is he an unlikely, unexpected scholar of Hegel? And we were sort of laughingly dismissed and told, no, absolutely not. One person said Trump had been handed an essay or a poem, they weren't quite sure what, that mentioned these three men. Another person said that last year Trump had attended a speech at his golf course where the speaker had sort of placed Trump in the scope of history, mentioning some of these men, also Genghis Khan. Maybe he got the idea there, this person suggested. But ultimately, what is happening, as it was described to us, is even if Trump doesn't understand the nuances of these three particular leaders, and certainly not of Hegel's theory of them as world great men, it's this idea that he is now talking about himself as the most powerful person who ever lived, or that he could be the most powerful person to ever live. And you are sort of seeing this in what we tongue-in-cheek, but also quite seriously dubbed the YOLO presidency. This is someone who is unburdened by ever facing voters on the ballot again. We're seeing sort of a largeness and freeing of ambition. And you see that in everything from the war in Iran and some of this foreign policy adventurism that I think voters didn't expect from this president. And then his, passion and instinct for physical, tangible tributes in his honor, whether it's remaking the nation's capital in his image or some of these other things you previewed just before I came on, his visage on coins and on the passport, and having a UFC fight in honor of America's 250th birthday. But he's actually having it on his birthday on the South Lawn of the White House in what is essentially, regardless of what he claims, a tribute to his own grandiosity.
Yeah, I mean, speaking of his own grandiosity, let me play for you what he said today about his ballroom when he was basically talking about the difference between using onyx and marble. Take a listen.
Now, right outside, we have something that's on time, on budget, actually ahead of time, and ahead of budget depending on finishes. Finishes is a big difference between marble and onyx in price. But it's right on budget, right on time. And that's built to the highest standards of security. No units on top, no hotel built on top where an elevator comes right down through the middle of it. It's a tough location. That's a tough location.
I'm trying to think of like Alexander the Great or Napoleon talking about elevators and units and elevator shafts and hotel units.
Yeah, I mean, some of this in talking to people and just having covered President Trump since 2015 is this is just core to his DNA. He is a developer. Blasting his name in, big, bold gold letters on buildings is something he's always done. But there is a difference between putting his name on Trump Tower that he helped develop on Manhattan's Fifth Avenue and putting his name on what is now the Trump Kennedy Center. Those are very different things. And aides reported to us that they can recount times in meetings in the Oval Office and meetings about politics and business at Mar-a-Lago, Trump sort of glimpsing something outside of his window, and they might be having a political discussion or a policy discussion, and him stopping the meeting to go outside and instruct, for instance, the Mar-a-Lago gardeners on some etiquette of pruning or on a placement or a material for the tile. So what we saw today is not that dissimilar, but voters are signaling that they believe it is inappropriate in the Oval Office from the leader of the country.
Yeah, so the real quick question I have for you, Ashley, is will all of this materialize into a desire to stay into power beyond 2028? He's already selling 2028 merchandise. He's alluded to it. People like Steve Bannon in his inner orbit have talked about finding a way to keep him on the ballot or getting him on the ballot. We all know that is not legal. That is not constitutionally permissible. But have you gathered any insight from your reporting that his mind has shifted from this let's make this all about me and how grandiose I am to actually usurping power and trying to upend our democracy again?
It's a great question. So it has been described to us what he is doing. This is almost a subconscious attempt at legacy building. He's not very introspective. Steve Bannon and people around him are very serious about the effort to subvert the Constitution to allow him to run for a third term. But by all indications, Trump himself, though he says that and jokes about it as of now, at least, it's very much a troll. The last thing I'll say briefly is there is an irony because whether or not he tries to stay in office, and again, no indication that is his current plan. The irony is that this is not going to help his party and Republicans stay in office in the midterms.